What's going on, guys? Darrell here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we got a good one for you guys. In today's video, we are going over a handful of running backs that may be deemed risky, but at the end of the day, it's not going to stop us from drafting them. When it comes to running backs, this is a position itself that is more risky. Running backs are a bit more smaller size with a higher BMI, two factors that already lead to an increased injury rate. Then factor in that their job is to run a football into 300 plus pound defenders, and the good ones are going to do that 20 plus times a game. It's no wonder why running backs get injured at the highest rate of any position in the league, and due to the high turnover rate, with each passing year, teams are less committed to one singular back, loading up the depth chart behind them, oftentimes waiting for one small mistake to be the reason to let the running back behind them take over snaps in their place. For those reasons, when it comes to fantasy drafts, finding a safe running back is much more difficult than finding one that's risky, but that's not to say you can't gain a ton of value in drafting these risky running backs. The key is to just make sure you're targeting the right ones. In today's video, we'll go over 4 running backs that are deemed riskier than normal, but regardless, many of them are likely going to land on one or more of our fantasy rosters. Before we do get into the video though, just a quick shout out and reminder, if you guys do want to see more content like this, if you do enjoy our daily uploads, all we ask in return is if you could just hit that like button. That lets us know that not only do you support the channel, but you are interested in seeing more videos like this. And truth be told, a few likes go an extremely long way with us, especially on those long days where we're up late making those more difficult videos. Also, we're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. This has been a goal of ours since we started the channel way back in 2015. 5+ years, 700+ videos, and our goal is to reach that by the start of the NFL season. While that goal is attainable, we'll definitely need all of your help out there, and believe it or not, nearly 60% of our daily viewers are actually not subscribed to the channel, and if you happen to be one of those people, we definitely appreciate the subscription, because each individual sub is one step closer to our 100k goal. With all that being said though, let's hop over to our stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was there were 19 players in 2020 to receive 120 plus targets, but only 4 of those players were drafted outside of the first 3 rounds. Those players were Stephon Diggs, Darren Waller, Keenan Allen, and which player was the 4th? The correct answer was actually Robbie Anderson. Congratulations to Caps for the Cup, who is the first person to get this right on YouTube. And as for Twitter, at Zach_Whitman. Once again, congratulations to both of you. But as for today's stat of the day, in 2020, Patrick Mahomes led the league in third down aggressiveness percentage. Which starting quarterback in 2020 ranked second just behind him? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Alright guys, without further ado, let's hop right into the video, and we're going to begin with the player on the thumbnail, none other than Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. Have you guys ever heard or used the term, a player can do no wrong? Maybe there's a certain player on your roster that no matter what the matchup is, you're just going to lock them in your starting lineup. That player could have a bad game in a positive matchup, or maybe they got banged up in practice, missing Wednesday and Thursday. As we know, missing practices mid and later on in the week is a huge red flag for potentially missing the following matchup, or even worse, still suiting up but only playing in 20, 30, 40% of snaps. While those situations are common and we all deal with them as fantasy managers, there are always going to be those certain players that have built our trust up over the years, allowing us to let our guard down, overlook red flags we commonly wouldn't for other players, and no matter how unbiased we try to be, no matter how much of a strategic approach we try and take, there are always going to be players that get the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, there are others that seem to always get the short end of the stick. I'll let you take a wild guess exactly which category Chris Carson falls in. I know most of you out there are sharks and want to say that Chris Carson is a player that has earned the benefit of the doubt, and while yes, looking at his body of work and what he's been able to do over the past few seasons, he definitely is a player who's done enough to earn our trust. But if we're not lying to ourselves, if we're actually looking at Chris Carson's situation, his draft price, what his production was last year, what his situation is for 2020, it's easy to see that he's not a player who's getting the benefit of the doubt. Quite the opposite, in fact. He's a player that's being consistently undervalued, consistently disrespected, and that's likely going to lead to him once again for the 3rd straight season being a draft day value. Currently, Chris Carson is coming off the board at around the RB19. You can look at his ADP across all platforms and see that he's nowhere near close to an RB1. RB19, we're already talking about a player who's on the back end of an RB2. And does that ADP really make a ton of sense for a player who is coming off of a season in which he was averaging 16 fantasy points per game through 12 games last season? 16 fantasy points per game was more than Jonathan Taylor was able to put up across the season, and Jonathan Taylor finished the season as the RB6. That's right, Chris Carson was producing mid-grade RB1 production. Not through a small stretch either. We're talking 12 games here, 3/4 of the season. But like I said, this isn't the first season where Chris Carson's been disrespected. Looking back to 2019, Chris Carson finished as an RB1 in both PPR and standard. And even looking back 1 year further, 2018, while Chris Carson didn't quite crack the top 12 at the running back position, he still was able to finish as the RB15, pretty respectable for a running back who only appeared in 14 games. Had he been able to appear in all 16, you better believe he would have finished as a top 12 running back. So now Chris Carson heading into 2021 after producing for 3 straight seasons as an RB1, he's struggling to even be ranked inside the top 20. Clearly, you can see how some things just don't add up here. You would think that Chris Carson in his situation was probably trending downward in order for him to drop in ADP. Maybe a new running back is going to be competing for touches and targets, but no, none of those things are true. The Seattle Seahawks offense is as strong as ever. In fact, word this offseason was that the team wanted to run the ball at a higher rate than they did last season. Most of us, of course, wish Russell Wilson would throw the ball more to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but no matter which way you look at it, this offense is still going to be one of the better offenses as long as Russell Wilson's healthy. The passing game is as good as ever with DK Metcalf heading into his 3rd season, Tyler Lockett getting an extension himself, and Chris Carson actually last season proved to us that he can actually have some chops in the receiving game, a factor that I won't deny was holding him back from reaching that upper echelon at the running back position. Chris Carson received 47 targets in a mere 12 games, meaning had he been able to appear in all 16, he would have eclipsed over 60 targets, a number that would have been by far a career high for him and pretty high compared to most running backs in the league. So anybody using his lack of work in the receiving game as an excuse to devalue him when it comes to ADP or why you won't draft him, his lack of work in the receiving game is no longer going to be a factor. So when trying to find out why Chris Carson is ranked so low and why many people are just straight up avoiding him, typically I can put myself in another person's shoes, look at it from their perspective, try and find out why they would be avoiding this player, but with Chris Carson, it's really difficult to do so. The only possible argument that I could entertain from people has to be his injury history and the risk of injury in 2021. He is, of course, coming off of a hip injury, only appearing in 12 games last season. Undoubtedly, he is a risk yet again to miss more games for 2021, but that's not to say he's going to come into this season as a much higher injury risk than many other running backs in the league. In fact, there are several other running backs that are being drafted ahead of him that have an even higher chance of injury risk, and even more running backs that are being drafted right around his range that, on top of being an injury risk themselves, also run the risk of losing their job to other competition in the backfield. This is an issue Chris Carson has absolutely no risk of. He also has absolutely zero risk when it comes to the power of the offense. We know the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson, they're going to be in scoring range, they're going to be in scoring distance often, they don't get blown out, they're not going to be 2-3 scores behind in the 3rd and 4th quarter often, meaning the run game is going to be viable in all 4 quarters, leading to more volume, more production for Chris Carson. So although he does have an increased injury risk over some players who simply just have not been injured over the past few seasons, he more than makes up for that with the safety in his offense as well as the safety in the depth chart behind him. So the way I see it, Chris Carson is actually a safer running back than many other running backs being drafted in his range. So when it comes to Chris Carson, all I can do is recommend that you don't avoid him. I can understand not wanting to draft him over certain players and certain running backs going in the earlier stages of the draft. It wouldn't make much sense for a team that went running back in the first 2 rounds to go out of their way to draft Chris Carson. But on the other hand, if a team were to go wide receiver, tight end, maybe they got Travis Kelce and Devontae Adams. Well, at this stage of the draft where Chris Carson's going, it's really difficult to find a 3-down workhorse. The closest thing to it is probably David Montgomery, but if we're comparing player for player, tit for tat, I'll take a Chris Carson, a proven 3-down workhorse, a player who's produced RB1 numbers over the past 3 seasons on an offense led by Russell Wilson, far before I'll take David Montgomery on an Andy Dalton-led offense, coming off of just a monster second half of the season, bringing into question whether he can keep up that type of production or if what we saw towards the beginning part of this season is more in line with what we can expect for 2021. So if I'm one of those people in the market for a 3-down running back after drafting other positions selections in the first 2 rounds, Carson is actually going to be a player at the top of my list. Alright guys, let's move on to the next player, and the next risky running back that you should not be avoiding definitely has to be Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. I did want to make sure to include Darrell Henderson in this video, largely because neither Nick nor I have talked much about Darrell Henderson this season. We've gone far out of our way to talk up every Rams player on this offense, from all the wide receivers all the way down to Van Jefferson, to Atwell, to the quarterback Matthew Stafford, and you already know how high we are on Cam Akers, but the one player we really haven't talked too much about definitely has to be Darrell Henderson, the running back who actually began last season as the LA Rams lead back. Admittedly, it's been a bit of a mess in this LA Rams backfield over the past few seasons since Gurley left. There's been a combination of new rookie running backs, as well as old veterans like Todd Gurley and Malcolm Brown still kicking around with mediocre production. But the positive news is that heading into the 2021 season and this offseason, the running back in the backfield is clearer than it's ever been. The coaching staff has also been very transparent about the intended usage of the running backs, something that we really didn't have a luxury of in previous seasons. And while much of this has led to an inflation of Cam Akers and his draft day price tag, Akers himself is now being drafted at the top 8 at the running back position. And while I can't argue that it's not warranted, I would love to draft Cam Akers in the top 10 at the running back position myself. I don't think we've done enough justice in telling people that Darrell Henderson is still a viable pick in the later rounds. For starters, we do have to understand the type of running back that Darrell Henderson is and why his role in the offense is better suited to play a backup role, to play a change of pace role. This is a smaller running back. We're talking 5'8", just over 200 pounds. No, this isn't a regular 3-down workhorse, 5'10", 225, or even one of these smaller 3-down backs that we have in the league, maybe 210, 215. No, Darrell Henderson, he's south of that. And while many people will use that as a reason to knock him, because if anything were to happen to Cam Akers, we do have to question his durability that was called into question last season before he went down to injury, paving the way for Cam Akers to have his own breakout. Darrell Henderson being a smaller back though shouldn't be held against him. For starters, it's what makes him so elusive. Darrell Henderson, even dating back to college, was one of the most elusive running backs in the entire NCAA history, and throughout his college career was one of the most efficient running backs to ever do it. It's no wonder he's found a lot of success in the NFL. A lot of the attributes that made him successful in his college days, they've translated over to the NFL level, and he's now had enough volume to get all of the kinks worked out, so he really knows what he's doing and can run with confidence. We saw that take place a lot last season, and heading into 2021, even though he's not going to be the lead back in this offense, that's not to say that even if Cam Akers is healthy, he's not going to get any volume, he's not going to have any startability. I can definitely see a situation where both Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are viable starters, so long as we alter our expectations, consider Darrell Henderson more of a Tariq Cohen type of player, at least while Cam Akers is healthy, and if Cam Akers ever did go down with an injury, Darrell Henderson of course would be the next man up. The LA Rams have already proved not to fear giving Darrell Henderson a full workload. On top of that, Darrell Henderson with that workload was consistently producing like an RB2 with RB1 upside. Now heading into 2021, there's even less competition to take touches than ever. Malcolm Brown out of town, and while many people are quick to give that benefit over to Cam Akers, using that as a reason to inflate the draft price of Cam Akers, I see the vacated roles of those other running backs mainly benefiting Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson is unique in the way that he is going to be a change of pace running back, meaning he could have immediate fantasy value if you do have to start him in the flex in a pinch. But unlike other change of pace backs like James White or Tariq Cohen, if anything were to happen to Cam Akers and he were to go down with an injury, something that we did see plague him just last season, so definitely not out of the cards. If an injury were to occur to Akers, Henderson would be one of the few change of pace running backs that could actually take over a 3-down workhorse role. That versatility is going to make him much more valuable than any other change of pace running back. Henderson, on top of playing that change of pace role, has the added benefit of also being a running back handcuff. But yet when many people talk about Darrell Henderson for this upcoming season, a lot of people in the later rounds just don't want to touch him. I don't understand it. We're super high on the Rams offense. We want to get as many pieces as we can tied to this offense. Darrell Henderson, while definitely not the shiniest toy in the toy box, he more than makes up for it by being the cheapest toy in the toy box. And with the combination of the strength of the offense, Cam Akers' injury last season, the lack of depth at the running back position behind him, there are so many things to like about Darrell Henderson, yet nobody's really talking about him as a running back to potentially target in the later rounds. Alright guys, we're moving on to the next player, and this one's not not going to take too much time to go over because there really isn't all that much analysis that we can truly put into this player. The player I'm of course speaking on is Michael Carter of the New York Jets, and the reason I say there's not much to go over is because we really don't have a ton of information out on the New York Jets camp. I can't say that's all too surprising. This is a younger team still trying to get their bearings. We're talking rookie quarterback Zach Wilson, second-year wide receiver Denzel Mims, first-year free agent wide receiver Corey Davis. On top of that, it's a new coaching staff. The running back, the one I'm going over, he's a rookie. The only real veteran who's been there for several seasons that plays a key role in this offense is Jamison Crowder, but we have to bring up the level of respect he gets into question. The team wanted to cut his pay in half, albeit Jamison Crowder, one of the most overpaid wide receivers in the league. I think even most of you guys would be shocked to see how much exactly he was getting paid. The Jets front office, though, really can't be surprised. I mean, it's really the only true reason that many people would want to go to the New York Jets. It's not really a team that people go to in order to win championships, but the point I'm trying to make is there are just so many moving parts and so many new pieces to this offense when compared to last season that expecting them to come out with a completely organized offseason program would just be an unrealistic expectation, especially when we're considering that this is the Jets we're talking about. And while I'm not making excuses for them, nor am I saying no news is good news, I think we all can agree that when there are many moving pieces and moving parts, a new quarterback, a new running back, new weapons in the receiving game, virtually a whole new offense, whenever there are that many changes to an offense and an organization, in turn, that does bring in some potential upside. If we were taking bets, the majority of people would bet that the Jets offense would be bottom 5 in the league, and while that may be true, there is always the chance that rookie Zach Wilson, a quarterback that a lot of scouts were high on, he could come out and surprise a lot of us. They did bring back the veteran weapons that produced the most last season. We're talking Jamison Crowder there. Corey Davis can definitely be used for his veteran leadership. We can't forget he's a first-round wide receiver who's faced a lot of adversity throughout his career. He's been there, he's done that, and he succeeded and overcame his obstacles. So there could be a possible case to be made for this offense to be much improved over what we had last season. The offense, though, as a whole should be so much different than what they had last season that it's almost not even worth comparing the two. But because this team is named the Jets, they have the same logo they had last season, they're the same colors they had last season. No matter how many pieces in this offense change, no matter if they get new coaches, a new quarterback, a new running back, new wide receivers, many people are always going to look at them as the Jets. And for that reason, there are going to be many players that are just simply off people's boards, not even being considered to be drafted by many players. And for that reason, a lot of people are going to miss out on the potential upside of these Jets players. And while none of it may pan out, it's very likely that the Jets do come out and are just so bad that there are no viable fantasy starters. When we're in the later rounds, when we're looking for upside, we already agree we don't care about the floor. So if we take a player on the Jets offense without knowing exactly how good the offense is and it ends up disappointing, are we really going to be missing out on all that much? No, it's not like we're investing earlier round draft picks into a New York Jets player on an offense that we're not sure exactly how it will perform. That would be a bad investment in your early round draft picks. But when it comes to these later round picks, we really could care less if we end up dropping the player. So for us to not know if the offense is going to be good or bad, or how good or exactly how bad, taking a shot on these players that have a lot of unknowns is actually going to be a really strong play for our late round picks. I'll be the first to admit that the odds of the New York Jets offense producing much for fantasy is definitely unlikely. The odds of an investment into a player like Michael Carter, it's an investment that has a low hit rate. 9 times out of 10 when I'm making that pick, I'm expecting to end up dropping him, but who's to say that's any different than any of the other running backs that are being drafted in that range? Believe it or not, Michael Carter himself actually has more upside than the majority of these other running backs, because unlike these other running backs that at best are going to be handcuffs in their offense, at best are going to be the change of pace running back in that offense, Michael Carter immediately right out of the gate has a very strong chance to be the starting running back. All signs out of camp have been very positive about him. The competition for running backs in that backfield, it is laughable. We have Tevin Coleman, a journeyman who really hasn't found success since he left Atlanta. Ty Johnson, yes, he can catch passes, but has he really done anything else? And when it comes to catching passes, has he really been all that much better than any other pass catcher? Not really. And the final RB that will be competing for touches is LaMichael Pirine. We certainly saw a large enough glimpse of him to know that he's not a true threat to be an actual starter. Yes, he could be a backup, but not much more than that. He was given the opportunity. He didn't do well. Michael Carter, on the other hand, a player with the freshest legs out of any of the running backs in this backfield, a player who also also has above average athleticism, coming in who's actually hungry to compete, matching the same drive and tenacity of the new quarterback Zach Wilson, another factor playing in his benefit. So there is a small chance out there that maybe the New York Jets offense surprises us. No, it doesn't have to be a top 15 offense. It could still be bottom 10. But if Zach Wilson is able to get this team in scoring situations frequently, if this offense looks different than it did with Sam Darnold under the helm, and if Michael Carter is going to win out this job to be the lead back, then would it surprise anyone to see Michael Carter produce as a top 25 running back? Well, admittedly, that would be a bit surprising and unlikely. We can't say that it's completely out of the range of outcomes, and when compared to the other running backs in this range, even having the ability to produce top 20 numbers as early as week 1 is 100% out of their range of outcomes. For those reasons, Michael Carter is definitely a player you should at least keep an eye on. He is a risky running back, but like I said, in the later rounds, you can drop him. It really makes no difference. We're shooting for maximum upside, and undoubtedly, the New York Jets offense, as gross as it sounds, does have some upside this season, at least until they prove us otherwise. Alright guys, we do have one other running back, but this video is pushing over 20 minutes, so I'll make this one quick. And in fact, there really isn't too much to go over on this one because the player we're talking about is AJ Dillon. When it comes to AJ Dillon, we know he is a bit one-dimensional. I should actually preface this by saying that AJ Dillon and his fantasy value is largely going to be determined by if Aaron Rodgers does return or not. If you're watching this video later on in the offseason and Aaron Rodgers was either traded to another team or has already confirmed to be holding out, my feelings and thoughts on AJ Dillon potentially being a sleeper may be different than they are at this current moment, and in June, I am fully expecting Aaron Rodgers to end up returning to Green Bay. In turn, I do believe this offense will return to somewhat of their 2020 form. No, they may not be competing for an MVP caliber offense, and while that is definitely in the wheelhouse, I think we can all agree that it's a bit unlikely, especially since this team's not really working as much of a team. But even a bad Packers offense by their standards would still be a top 15 offense nonetheless. The Green Bay Packers are also a team that doesn't get down by 2 scores often. When they do, it always seems like they have an ability to pull their way out, mainly on the back of Aaron Rodgers. And when it comes to offenses like that, the running backs in those offenses typically have an opportunity to shine. Leading this backfield will be Aaron Jones, who this season, as opposed to previous seasons, will actually be taking up most of the work in the receiving game. Aaron Jones, I believe, is a phenomenal pick this year. Once again, that is going to be on the back of Aaron Rodgers returning. I wouldn't really be thrilled about investing my early round draft pick into Aaron Jones with Jordan Love leading this team at quarterback. But Aaron Jones himself, as an individual contributor, has proven to be one of the best running backs in the league, especially on the ground. Last season, he definitely showed that he had chops in the receiving game, so much so that the team felt comfortable enough with letting go of Jamal Williams, the player that played in that role previously. But with Jamal Williams out of town, Aaron Jones focusing more on the receiving game, the odds are they are going to lighten up a lot of the work for him on the ground. As we know, Aaron Jones is a player who's a bit more injury prone. When it comes to comparing the rush attempts versus receptions and how taxing they are on the body, it's been proven. Rush attempts are much worse for running backs when it comes to risk of injury. In a vacuum, a player getting 20 rush attempts versus a player getting 20 receptions, the risk of injury for the player getting 20 rush attempts is going to be much greater than that of the receiving back, which I feel did play a strong factor into why this team felt comfortable with letting go of Jamal Williams, paving the way for Aaron Jones to develop himself in the receiving game. Jones hasn't necessarily been the best receiving back in the league, but one thing we know is that if you get the ball in his hands and in space, he can make insane things happen. So it's pretty clear that the Green Bay Packers offense does plan on getting the ball into Aaron Jones' hands. Much less though from under center, much more so from the receiving game. And every rush attempt that Aaron Jones does not take, every rush attempt that's vacated from Jamal Williams, 70, 80, 90% of those reps are all going to go to AJ Dillon. If you guys were unaware, AJ Dillon is a complete monster. He's the closest thing we have to Derrick Henry in the league. We're talking 6 foot, 247 pounds. Looking at him in pads and shorts, he looks like the Hulk on the training field. But the best thing about AJ Dillon and his size is that it's extremely functional muscle. AJ Dillon is an exceptional athlete. We're talking 71st percentile 40-yard dash time, insanely fast, especially for a player who's just 6 feet tall and nearly 250 pounds. But it doesn't stop there. We're talking 97th percentile burst score, Burst score, as we know, has a heavy translation to success at the running back position, but it doesn't end there either. We're talking 97th percentile height adjusted speed score with an 81st percentile college dominator rating. Needless to say, AJ Dillon, he is a stud. Unfortunately for him though, his work is going to be limited to just ground game work. That is going to make him a really difficult player to start so long as Aaron Jones is healthy. That's exactly where the risk in drafting AJ Dillon comes in. But if AJ Dillon ever ends up getting the workhorse running back role in this offense, meaning Aaron Jones were to go down with an injury, AJ Dillon, who we saw last season in a game against Tennessee, actually received a full workload at the running back position. With a full workload, he turned 21 rush attempts on the ground into a whopping 124 rushing yards. That's right, he ran at nearly 6 yards per clip, scoring twice in the process, doing his best Derrick Henry impression while Derrick Henry was on the other side of the field. Now really, outside of that, there's not really too much to add to it. Aaron Jones isn't going to lose his job so long as AJ Dillon and him are both healthy. AJ Dillon's unlikely to just simply usurp him in his receiving down work. AJ Dillon, he's simply not a strong pass catcher. Aaron Jones, while not a strong pass catcher himself, he's much better and much more advanced than that of AJ Dillon. But on the bright side, AJ Dillon should still get some early involvement, get some work on early downs as well as goal line. So that's not to say he won't have any startability. He'll just be one of those players who, if he doesn't score a touchdown, likely won't pay off the start. So until he ends up getting a heavier workload, he's likely a player you want to leave on your bench. But oftentimes when I'm seeing people making decisions on running backs in the later rounds, I'm seeing AJ Dillon's name pop up, but nobody really considering him. Yes, he's a risky running back because you do run the risk of having him on your bench, watching Aaron Jones produce each week. But if there is an opportunity for AJ Dillon to get all the touches in this offense led by Aaron Rodgers, AJ Dillon, I'm telling you, could be a top 10 running back. His work in the receiving game isn't even going to be necessary. He could definitely resemble a player that produces like Derrick Henry in the run game. And for me, that upside more than makes up for the risk in drafting him. So for me, I'll likely have 1 or 2 shares of AJ Dillon this season. We definitely recommend you do too. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hope you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.